What happens when the machine can't be switched off? For a long time, London believed systems could always be paused, that markets could be slowed, adjusted, restarted. But some machines are not built to stop. They are built to run continuously. And continuous motion changes responsibility. This matters now because modern finance depends on momentum. Liquidity, confidence, and credit assume constant flow. Interruption is treated as failure. Early financial systems stopped naturally. Markets closed. Trading paused. Time created separation between action and consequence. As systems modernized, stoppage became unacceptable. Global markets replaced local rhythms. Digital infrastructure removed natural breaks. The machine learned to operate without rest. Positions rolled forward automatically. Obligations renewed by default. This created efficiency. Opportunities expanded. Capital circulated without friction. But perpetual motion removed reflection. Decisions overlapped. Exposure accumulated invisibly. When nothing stops, nothing resets. Institutions adapted to continuity. Risk was managed in motion. Corrections were layered on top of activity. The idea of pause became theoretical. Who would stop first? And what would that signal? Stopping implied weakness. So no one stopped. This transformed fragility. Instead of isolated failures, stress propagated instantly. The machine did not wait for permission. It carried yesterday's assumptions into today automatically. This created dependence, not on outcomes, but on uninterrupted flow. The question was no longer how systems fail. It was whether they could ever slow down enough to notice failure forming. Because machines that cannot be switched off do not fail gently. They fail all at once. As continuity became normal, safeguards adapted to motion. Controls were embedded into flow. Checks occurred without stopping activity. This worked until it didn't. When systems never pause, problems do not wait. They compound while processes continue. Exposure builds beneath routine. Institutions trusted automation. Rollover replaced review. Renewal replaced reassessment. Risk was assumed to be managed because it was constantly monitored. But monitoring is not interruption. Signals were observed, not acted on. Thresholds were adjusted instead of challenged. Warnings were acknowledged, then deferred, because stopping the machine felt dangerous. Halting flow threatened confidence. Confidence sustained the system. This created a dilemma: address risk and interrupt motion, or preserve motion and defer risk. Most chose motion, because motion felt like stability. The machine absorbed small shocks easily, which encouraged belief in its resilience. But absorption is not correction. Without pauses, misalignment persisted. Errors were carried forward. Assumptions rolled indefinitely. Time lost its function as a separator. Yesterday's exposure became today's baseline. Today's risk became tomorrow's inheritance. The machine normalized accumulation, not through intent, through continuity. Participants stopped asking when to pause. They asked how to keep going. This changed governance fundamentally. Oversight shifted from decision points to trend observation. But trends hide inflection. They smooth warning signals. They delay recognition. When interruption finally became unavoidable, it arrived without preparation. Because systems that never stop do not practice stopping, and unpracticed pauses are indistinguishable from breakdown. When interruption finally occurred, it felt unnatural, not corrective, but catastrophic. The machine resisted slowing. Connections tightened instead of releasing. Dependencies surfaced all at once. Processes designed for motion struggled under stillness. Positions could not be unwound cleanly. Timelines collapsed into the present because nothing had been built to stop. What should have been a pause became a shock. Institutions discovered that continuity had replaced contingency. There were plans for movement, few for suspension. The absence of breaks had synchronized exposure. Everything depended on everything else continuing. When one component hesitated, others reacted immediately, not sequentially, simultaneously. This magnified impact. Stress spread faster than response. Decisions were forced without rehearsal. The machine revealed its flaw. It had no off switch, only failure modes. Attempts to stabilize felt extreme. wide interventions, emergency measures, abrupt resets. Because gradual adjustment was no longer possible, time had been consumed by continuity. This was not a design error. It was a design outcome. Systems optimized for constant motion sacrifice flexibility under interruption, the inability to pause, turn correction into crisis. Participants realized too late that stoppage is a function, not a defect. Without pauses, systems cannot digest stress. They can only accumulate it. And accumulation demands release. When release arrives suddenly, it overwhelms structures built for flow. The machine did not fail because it stopped. It failed because it had never learned how. After the machine slowed, design changed, not to prevent motion, but to permit pause. Markets reintroduced friction deliberately. Circuit breakers, settlement delays, decision checkpoints. These were not signs of weakness. They were acknowledgments of reality. A system that cannot pause, cannot adapt. The lesson was clear. Continuity without interruption creates hidden fragility. Modern finance still values speed, but it now recognizes the cost of endless motion. Pauses allow reassessment. They force recognition. They create space for judgment. London's markets did not abandon automation. They constrained it. Machines now include off switches, not to stop progress, but to preserve it. Because resilience is not constant movement. It is controlled interruption. Systems that endure are those that can slow without collapsing, that can pause without panic. The future remains uncertain, but uncertainty is easier to manage when time is allowed to separate cause and effect. The machine no longer pretends it cannot stop. It accepts that stopping is part of functioning. That acceptance reshaped modern finance quietly, not through headlines, but through design. And it leaves us with one final reflection. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future. What this episode also revealed is something about the psychology of systems and the people who design them. Builders tend to optimize for the conditions they expect, not the conditions they fear. The machine was built for flow because flow was the goal. Pause was not the goal. Pause was a threat to the goal. And so pause was not designed for. It was avoided. That avoidance was rational in isolation. Each individual decision to keep the machine running made sense. Stopping alone would have signaled weakness. It would have triggered the very instability everyone feared. Collective inaction emerged from individual rationality. Every participant understood the risk of stopping. None could afford to go first. And so the machine continued, past the point where continuation was wise, past the point where intervention was easy, into the territory where the only available corrections were the ones large enough to be felt by everyone at once. This is the classic structure of systemic risk. Not malice, not negligence. Coordinated rational behavior, producing irrational collective outcomes. The machine did not fail because people were foolish. It failed because people were sensible. Each sensible choice, repeated across thousands of participants, created a system that no individual had chosen, and no individual could exit. Without consequences they could not absorb alone. That is the deepest problem with machines that cannot be switched off. They are not switched off because the cost of switching off is distributed, while the benefit of continuing is concentrated. Each participant captures the gains from motion. Each participant shares the losses from pause. So motion continues until it cannot. Understanding that structure does not make it easy to solve, but it makes it possible to design against. Circuit breakers work not because they pause the machine, but because they change the distribution of the cost of pausing. They make collective pause possible by making individual pause unnecessary. No one has to go first. The machine pauses for everyone simultaneously, and in doing so, it does what no participant could do alone. It creates the separation between action and consequence that time used to provide naturally before the machine learned to run without rest. That is the lesson the machine taught, slowly, expensively, and in ways that are still being absorbed. Systems need design pauses, not as concession to failure, as infrastructure for resilience, because a machine that cannot be switched off is not more powerful, it is more fragile. and fragility, concealed by continuous motion, is the most dangerous feature a system can have. What happens